Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My brothers and sisters, the first thing that we need to understand is that studying the life of our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is not just a means to earn a good grade in an exam or to gain knowledge so that we can debate non-Muslims. Rather, it is a source of guidance for us on how to live our lives. It is a manual for success in this world and the hereafter. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the best role model for all Muslims to follow. So when we study his life, we learn how to be righteous individuals, how to build a strong community, and how to establish a just society. The objectives of studying the Seerah are numerous, but to mention a few. It teaches us about the man whom Allah chose to be the last prophet of mankind. It tells us how the message of Islam was revealed, and it shows us how the early Muslims spread the message of Islam from a small persecuted community to becoming the rulers of the known world within a span of just over a century. To understand the Seerah, we have to look at the world as it was at the time of the Prophet's birth. To begin with, the world was plunged into darkness. There was no light or guidance from Allah. The two superpowers of the time were the Roman Empire in the west and the Persian Empire in the east. Both empires were huge. They ruled over diverse populations from different races and backgrounds. They had vast amounts of wealth and power. But what was life like for the people under their rule? Well, let's start with the Romans. If you wanted to be a civilian in the Roman Empire, then you would be considered a subject. This means that you had to pay taxes to the emperor, and you couldn't really own any property or even choose your own leader. The Roman Empire was also very cruel. They persecuted Christians, and anyone who didn't worship the Roman gods was considered a foreigner. And in those days, being a foreigner meant that you had no rights at all. As for the Persians, well, they had it even worse. Not only were they subjects of the empire, but they were also slaves. The Persian kings treated them like property, and they could do whatever they wanted with them. The only way to escape this fate was to convert to Zoroastrianism, the official religion of the Persian Empire. But this didn't really bring freedom, because now you were forced to worship another god. Then there was India. Now, India was doing a bit better than the other two because it was more diverse. There were Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and a few Muslims. But although there was religious freedom, there was no equality. The rigid social structure meant that if you were born a low caste, then you were stuck there forever. Your job, your wealth, and even who you could marry was decided by your caste. If you weren't born into the upper class, then you didn't really have any rights. So to put it simply, the world was in a bad shape. There was no freedom, no justice, and most importantly, there was no guidance from Allah. It was a time when people had strayed far away from the path of righteousness. But Allah Almighty had a plan to send the final message of humanity to turn the course of history in the right direction. And this is where the Arabian Peninsula comes into the picture. On the Arabian Peninsula, there lived a people known as the Arabs. They traced their lineage back to the Prophet Ismail, a son of Prophet Ibrahim, peace be upon him. The Arabs were divided into many tribes, but they were all connected through their common ancestor, Ismail. Each tribe had its own chief, and they were generally free to do as they pleased. But overall, they were a peaceful and independent people. They had strong morals and values, and they were known for their courage and resilience. Above all, they believed in one God, Allah. This was the original monotheistic faith that was sent to Abraham, peace be upon him. But over time, the Arabs had corrupted this pure faith and had turned it into idolatry. They began to associate partners with Allah and to worship false gods. They built shrines and altars and made statues and images to represent their deities. They also introduced various forms of divination and fortune-telling into their religious practices. Despite their shortcomings, however, the Arabs still possessed a strong sense of freedom and independence. They were fierce warriors and were known for their hospitality and generosity. It was among these people that Allah chose to send his final prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Arabs were not perfect, but Allah saw the potential in them. They were a resilient and courageous people who had a strong sense of independence. More importantly, they were connected to the lineage of prophets through Ismail. And above all, they still believed in one God, even though they had strayed away from the true path. So Allah chose the Arabs to be the custodians of Islam, not because they were the best, but because Allah wanted to bless them and the entire humanity through them. In the next part of the video, we will discuss what was happening in Mecca at the time of the Prophet's birth, and why did Allah choose Mecca to be the birthplace of his Prophet. We will also discuss the tribe of Quraysh and their role in the early days of Islam. And finally, we will talk about the story of Abraham and how his attempt to destroy the Kaaba actually backfired and helped to establish the power of the house of God. And Allah knows best. Until next time.